Okay, in order to do this construction, if someone was expecting you to construct a bisector of this segment or to find the midpoint of this segment, you would be provided with a segment. So this is what the problem would look like essentially. There would just be a segment sitting here, and your instructions would either say, draw a bisector for the segment, bisect the segment, find the midpoint of the segment, anything that implies you need to cut it in half, okay? So this is what you would be looking at as the problem, so to speak, okay? So use your straight edge to draw that. Did everybody get a compass? All right, so if you have, yeah. So this would be the problem. This is segment AB. It could be called whatever you want it to be called. If this is my problem, I want to split it in half, there are a few things I would want to do through the process. So I'll walk you through, then you guys could do it, and then we'll talk about like summarizing the steps to make sure you know how to do it on your own. If you have the instruction pages, they have instructions, but sometimes when you look back and read them, just like reading your math textbook, it's not completely understandable. But if you've done it and then you've made your own instructions in your own words, sometimes that is more helpful. So basically what's happening here is we're going to use the compass to measure. Okay, so the way that these compasses work, this part right here, where the circle is, that's like the pointy part of the compass, but these are safety compasses, so no one can hurt themselves or anybody else, okay? So this is where your point is, so kind of the center of this is what it pivots around. That means your pencil goes through one of these two holes that's on this slide right here. And what you do is slide it in different directions depending on the measurement that you want to make. When we're making this measurement here, you can see from the instructions, we basically want to create some intersecting arcs. So in order to do that, you don't have to set it at some specific measurements. You're not going to memorize numbers or anything like that. You want to memorize the process. I want to set my measurement so that it's more than halfway. So I'm going to use the outer point to stick my pen through when I'm creating my construction right here. Okay. So notice that I set the distance to here, and this distance is longer than half the length of my line. You can still make arcs if they're not, but will the arcs meet each other if they didn't go past the halfway mark? No, they'll be stuck on their own little side of the line and they won't meet each other. So you set some distance longer than the halfway mark. Then you set your compass on point A, and you use your pencil to draw one arc from point A, then without changing the distance. This is the important part, because you're basically using this to set a distance. And if you do it from one end and the other end, it's going to find the middle for you. So you can't change the distance. Then you set it on point B, and you repeat the process. And so what you've done is you've created two arcs, okay, that size did not change, one from point A and one from point B. Where these arcs intersect are now the points that we're going to use to guide us to make our bisector. So if I use those 2 points, sorry. Okay, question. Does it matter which what? No. Doesn't matter which hole. You could use the inside or the outside of the slide. Okay? It matters that you set it to a length more than halfway the distance of your segment, and that you use that exact same length from point A and from point B. Okay? So when you're done, you create some intersections. Your intersections are your guide, okay, to draw your final answer. This segment here is the bisector. So if somebody wanted me to draw a line or a segment that is a bisector of that original segment, that's what that straight line is doing. If they had wanted me to find the midpoint, I would still draw that line, but my focus would be to find this point right here. This would be the midpoint. If we called that midpoint M, this is telling us the distance from A to M is the same as the distance from M to B. Okay, so that's what that construction does. splits it in half. All right, so the goal of this construction is to create something that is perpendicular to a line. So it may or may not be cutting it in half, but we want to make sure that it's perpendicular, okay? So if they wanted you to make something that was perpendicular to a line, they will have given you a line. So the problem would look like this. Well, it doesn't have to be a segment. It could be a line. And then they'll either give you freedom or they won't. So they might say, draw something perpendicular to this line, and that's it. Or they'll say, draw something that's perpendicular to this line, and I would like it to go through this point. So if they don't give you point P, but they want you to still draw some perpendicular line anywhere you want, you put your own point P wherever you want to put it. Is that good with everybody? So they either say you have to go through this point. If they just say draw something perpendicular to this line, you give yourself a point and then start from there. Okay? Right, so I mean, we could eyeball and be like, I think that's perpendicular, but the construction is going to give us the exact measurements. So then what we're going to do is we are going to take our compass, and the first thing we're going to do is make an arc that intersects our line, where point P is the center of the circle for that arc. Okay? So set it at a distance to make sure that you will actually intersect your line. So for me, this would be too big because that goes beyond my line. Okay? This will work. So I set a distance where if I use point P as the center, I could then use my compass to make this arc. Okay. Okay. Yeah, right. Has to intersect the line at 2 points. Okay. So we have to set it at a distance so that it will intersect our line twice. Okay. I'm going to call those points points A and points B. Kind of like last time. It's not your compass that's not letting you. It's your binder that's not letting you. Yeah. Maybe do it on another page and do it more towards the edge. I would make it a little bit bigger. Because you're going to have to use these two separate points, and it's hard to see them on there unless you see the two distinct points. Okay, here's the thing. You need to use these 2 points for the next step in the process. So I don't care how big or how small your arc is, except for that you need to clearly see a place where the arc intersects your line one time and then a separate place where it intersects again. Okay? Now we're actually going to do something very similar to what we did previously. We're going to use points A and points B and measure equal distances from them. So we're going to set our compass. You can either not change the distance from what you had last time, or you can. It doesn't matter. Now, you already have point P, and in our case, point P is above the line. So if we want to draw another line perpendicular to this one, and we know it's supposed to go through point P, we want another point below the line that we know we're supposed to connect it to. So I'm going to go ahead and put my compass on my intersection, that point A that I made. Again, you can reset the distance or not. It's up to you. Okay. And I'm just going to make an arc out there in space. Okay. And then I'm going to do it again from point B. Very similar to what you did in the last construction. So very much like what we did in the last construction. The difference is in the last construction, they gave you points A and B. You didn't have to find, okay, the segment. It already had certain endpoints. So we made point A and B last time, and then we set a distance and we made arcs using point A and B. Same thing here, but you just need one set of arcs out here. Okay. The reason you don't need them to go all the way up above the line is because you already have point P sitting there that you've based everything off of. Okay. So this place where these arcs intersect using point A and point B, here, thank you. That's what we're now going to connect to point P. Now, does that segment cut my line in half? No, because one, a line goes on forever, so where's the halfway point? Okay. But notice, is it the middle between A and B where I drew my line? Yeah. So basically the only new step in this was using point P. So we kind of make like, oh, all this revolves around point P. And then it was kind of like what we did before. Okay? And that guarantees that you have a perpendicular here through point P and crossing through your line. Nick? Not really, because there's infinite amount of space. We can't measure it. Right. No, I get it. Both sides have infinite amount of points, right? But because infinite is not measurable, we don't know that it's the same distance on each side. Does that make sense? I know. So good. All right. So here is my line that is perpendicular to my original line through point P. Okay. Oh, yeah, because it shouldn't be slanted. I'll look at it. All right. Go through and write some steps if you're stuck on the construction. Forgot to record it, so I'm just going to say, oh, look, it's just like the second one. So any questions about this one? Again, in your steps, either list the steps, but they were the same steps as the second one, okay. Or just say that it's the same as the other one so you can compare it.